Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of OA News Overtime. I'm Jordan Hill with Justin Lee, as always.
Jordan.
Justin.
Had veggies to go for lunch.
All set.
That was a mistake.
But you know what? We're going to power through this, just like we powered through the first week of college football.
Veggies to go is never a mistake, but I have a lot to do, and I just want to take a nap.
Yeah, but we'll get through this together, buddy. I promise. We'll make this quick.
All right.
So we did the podcast coming off of the Akron game on Saturday, our little wrap-up. It was like 15 minutes.
If you missed that one, check it out.
And that's sort of our plan, and we might play with the formatting a little bit, but coming off of those games, we're going to try to give you a quick little recap podcast, sort of our immediate reactions after the game. I think as far as the Penn State game next week, my plan is probably to Zoom. We'll probably Zoom. Figure it out. And but yeah, that's probably the plan. So we'll keep those recap podcasts coming. Mm-hmm. We talked a good bit about the Akron game. Now that we've been a few days removed from it, now we're recording on Thursday.
Right.
Are there any other things that kind of linger in your head? Anything that have kind of stood out with a little bit of time to reflect on how the Akron game played out?
I mean, it's just you say. Bo Nix looked good even if it was against air, right? It's like, well, you want to see that again, right? You want to see, the Alabama State defense isn't going to be better than Akron's, and Akron's was bad. But, you want to see if he can still be that efficient, if he can carry that into 2 games and go to Penn State with a lot of confidence. So I think that's the main thing. It's kind of hard. It's kind of hard and kind of strange, honestly, in this new era. I mean, in the modern years of college football, I mean, Gus so many times opened with a Washington and Oregon with a game early would have been North Carolina. Mm-hmm. So to just have 2 games like this feels a little different. So it feels a little out of the norm. So and of course last year was just SEC right out of the gate. You're just kind of trying to figure out what can you learn from Alabama State after Akron, and it's can the O-line, for me, can the O-line continue to keep Bo Nix completely clean? Mm-hmm. And then the other is can Bo be as efficient as he was?
And really on the other side for me is can that defense just keep getting after opposing offensive lines? I mean, Cato Nelson is well regarded as a MAC quarterback. I mean, no one sees him as, a real standout group of 5 quarterback, but they think highly of him, and he was totally ineffective, and it was because of the pass rush. I mean, mm-hmm. He truly did not have time to make plays, and that's a credit to that defensive line. But again, that was Akron. I mean,
right. And
even coming out of this weekend, which we'll talk a little bit about Alabama State in a second, there's only so much you're going to be able to glean from that.
Right.
There's not a lot of, definites you're going to say, oh, well, we know we can trust this or we can trust that going into a really highly anticipated game against Penn State.
Because, again, Jordan, when is Bo at his worst?
On the road.
Well.
When
he's getting pressured is what I meant.
Well,
That too.
I mean, I'm just stating facts.
But I was going to say, when he gets pressured, he leaves the pocket too early, people say, and he got no pressure from Akron.
Correct.
And he'll have no pressure from Alabama State. So that's
spoiler.
Yeah. So that's something, they're going to have to deal with in the future. But that's a good point too, going on your first road game.
Yeah. It's going to be a big test. It's going to be a big test for Bo and Brian Harsin and really the whole team as far as how they handle that. But we got a game before. We are not we at the OA News Overtime. We're not looking ahead,
we're
Justin.
Not looking ahead. We take a game by game,
We are trying to be 1-0 every day, and that's when we record the podcast, when we post it, when we share it on social media. Brother, they are playing Alabama State on Saturday. It's going to be an 11 a.m. kick.
Get up.
Don't sound more excited, please.
Well, and people ask us, what's the best? It's like, oh, well, at least it's not, late at night. But, for us, because we have the print newspaper that comes out, so we're still working at, 11.
Yeah, we have high school football the night before.
Right, and we have high school football the night before. So, for us, it's not a deadline crunch because, when you have a game at 7, it ends at 10, you go to print at 11. It's panic and type, which is very stressful and very up and down.
Yeah.
But when you have an 11 a.m. game, We're getting there at 8 a.m. Tiger walks at 9.
Yeah, it almost feels like an all-nighter. I mean, it's really not, but I mean, you don't get sort of the normal.
And then we're still working on the news. The newspaper prints late at night to get all the news in.
Yeah.
So the newspaper prints at 10:20.
Yeah.
So
somebody's got to do that.
Somebody's got to do it, brother, and it's me. So, so it's like these 11 games are long day affairs. But again, as Jason Caldwell always says it, the worst one is 2:30 because there's no time to do anything before and there's no time to do anything after.
Yeah.
It just sandwiches your whole day.
That makes sense.
For us, it's those 11s. So.
For sure. So they're playing Alabama State. As of Thursday, I haven't seen like a line on this game, but it would be multi-touchdowns. It would be more probably than that 37 that Auburn was favored against Akron.
Right.
Alabama State's coming in this game. They barely beat Miles College to open their season 14-13 in overtime. This should be a pretty quick affair. I don't see any, real interest. The biggest thing is going to be, like we talked about last week, and it's going to be in our picks and predictions this week in Saturday's Game Day edition. On the whole, we didn't see a ton of freshmen, that played in that Akron game. To me, this is a golden opportunity to try to get some of those guys more involved. More guys like Jarquez Hunter who really impressed, and let those young guys loose and see what they can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then we've talked about it. The new, I guess 3 years old redshirt rules now are that you can play in 4 games and still redshirt. So a lot of people. If there's someone out there who would redshirt this year, they can still play in games like this, and will. So it's been kind of weird though, because and I guess maybe that's the deal with the new coaching staff is they're like, hey, we brought in transfers and we're playing them.
Yeah.
They're new, we're new, and that's it. So we really didn't see a lot of those young people like you mentioned, but maybe we'll see more of them this game. We'll be looking we'll keep an eye on it, and we'll see who we can see. But yeah, this one will be over quickly. Miles is good for SIAC, but again, that's a Division II team.
Yes, exactly.
That ASU went to overtime with. So
yeah, not you don't come off a game like that and see yourself with a chance of being an SEC team. But had a chance to talk to Alabama State's coach on a Zoom earlier this week and just sort of asked him, what this opportunity means for his players. Obviously, it's a nice paycheck. Alabama State's getting like $550,000 for this game. Mm-hmm. But he brought up the fact that this is a chance for them, some of the more highly thought of players on this team to test themselves and to show what they're capable of doing. And he brought up a great example actually 3 years ago now when Alabama State played Auburn. Titus Howard, who was an offensive tackle, went up against Auburn defense, and lo and behold, when they got to the NFL draft, he was first-round draft pick. So, he proved that he could hang with, top talent, and that was something that Alabama State's coach really hit on was, not everybody on our team has that capability, but we do have a few. And when they get a chance to play in an environment like this against, guys that in high school were 4 stars, 5 stars, really highly thought of, they can show scouts we can play at the next level. Don't look at us and think, oh, well, we're at lowly Alabama State.
Right.
There are prospects that are worth keeping an eye on, and that's sort of something that they think could work to their advantage in the long run by playing teams like Auburn.
I feel like I remember that kid.
I think he was I can't remember who. I know he's with the Houston Texans now. I can't remember if that's who drafted him, but he was like about the 22nd pick in the draft that year.
So was this 2018?
I believe so, yeah, because Stidham was still there.
Okay, so it's 2018.
Yeah. And Auburn won that game like 63-9.
Sure, but I remember that, and I almost remember like an Auburn D lineman complimenting that player.
It might have been.
Like I honestly, we'll look it up.
Yeah.
I think I remember that. But yeah, this is especially like linemen. This is how you get your film because you're going one-on-one. Cornerbacks and receivers too.
Yeah.
Get some film of being a one-on-one with an SEC player, and yeah, that's your best. It's the best film you can get in college.
So it'll be nice to see Alabama State. There's a couple of local kids. There's a defensive lineman from Central Phoenix City. You got Jaquan Foote, who's a linebacker from Opelika. So they will be kind of close to home, kind of playing a hometown game in Jordan-Hare. Looking at this game, I think my prediction was 45-3. I don't think they'll quite hit that 60 that they hit last week. I think they'll kind of have a little bit of mercy on Alabama State.
Right.
besides that, I'll do another sort of hot take and say this is the week that there's a special teams touchdown. I know I said it last week. I think Javarius Johnson runs a punt back and gets the special teams on the board. So,
right.
So predictions or thoughts or anything?
Wait, now did you say last week there would be a special teams touchdown or a special teams score?
I think I said special. Well, yeah, I should have probably said special team score, but I meant touchdown. So, and I think I put it on Donovan Kaufman, which I don't think he wound up returning punts. So, but I mean, I got the field goal and a safety.
Hey,
what? I mean, come on, man.
The safety, that's a special team score.
Yes.
So there you go. Yeah, it's not gonna be close.
No, we're gonna be done hopefully fairly early.
Yeah. So. You know what these games are, and what is it, $550,000? But it's staying in state, and we've talked about this before. This is part of, I think it was something that started with under Jay Jacobs, but the initiative to play every in-state FCS team, and they've done a lot of them twice. So they've done Alabama State twice, Alabama A&M in 2012 and 2016. They played Jacksonville State once and said, never again.
One time and said that. All right, go with God.
But now, they've played Sanford a couple times,
yes.
I think.
Yep.
They've played, all the FCS teams, and the only ones they haven't played is North Alabama because they got bumped up recently in the middle of this initiative. I hope they add North Alabama. I hope they can make that happen. That's a good initiative that they've had to keep that money in state. That's something that Auburn wanted to do, and there you go. And the other school across the state isn't doing that crap.
No, and that's something for people who don't kind of understand how the money works. I mean, these FBS games against these FCS schools work tremendously in favor of FCS teams as far as balancing their whole athletic budget, paying for the non-revenue sports.
Right.
I mean, that's huge to be able to play these teams. And I was really pleased. Brian Harson was asked about this on Wednesday, and he sounded all in favor to continue these sort of games. This game was already on the schedule long before he was hired, but he said that this was something he'd like to see continue, and that in a way it really kind of puts a spotlight on kids from Alabama, because all of these schools have tons of kids that are from the state.
Sure.
So that was nice to hear. I mean, obviously, we'll see if that comes to fruition. And we've looked at some of the future schedules, and there's not at this point an Alabama team on there. But there is room in some of those years to add another non-con game. But that was at least nice to hear from the new coach saying that was something he supported.
Right, for sure. And I think there is a game against South Alabama on down the line, but that's FBS. So
Yeah. So changing the tune a little bit from football to men's basketball, some kind of surprising news this week.
Some devastating news.
Yes, not great. Alan Flanagan is coming into his junior year, had to have surgery on his right Achilles. Expected that he'll miss 12 to 14 weeks. That's going to put him probably at the very end of November, maybe December, if he kind of is able to hold to that timeline. That's a big blow. What are your thoughts on seeing that Flanagan is going to miss a significant amount of time? And when you look at this Auburn team, a lot of people have high expectations, but this is going to be a big blow to start the year.
Yeah, Alan Flanagan. We talked about it. We talked about this is the year for Bo Nix. For Alan Flanagan, this was the year. This is and he was already a team leader, but now it's like, hey, it's your team, Alan. It really is. And he's grown into his body so much. Looking at how he played toward the end of last year versus when he was a freshman. He knows his way around the court better. He knows his way around his body better. He was kind of lanky. Now he's gotten some muscle on there. He looks like Isaac.
Mm-hmm.
And he could play like him too if all the things line up. And unfortunately, this is a setback for him. So that's going to make the start of the season, which was already going to be difficult with all these new players, even more difficult because it's even more new players.
Yeah.
And like I said before, buy stock in Chris Moore.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden now you're looking at Chris Moore. I mean, there was a point in time when Auburn was adding all these players, all these transfers, and some folks were leaving when it looked like Chris Moore could be squeezed out. And if Chris Moore had left, no one would have blamed him. Mm. But since then, JT Thor did indeed leave. You had Trey Alexander, who was going to come and not, and then all of a sudden you're giving a scholarship to Preston Cook, which we called on this podcast, by the way.
Shout out to the Auburn High alum.
Yeah. So all of a sudden you're giving a scholarship to Preston Cook, and Chris Moore is right where he needs to be to get some solid minutes as 9th or 10th in the rotation. Now he's up to 8th or 9th.
Yeah.
By stocking Chris Moore and, show him some love and appreciate him for staying, because he's going to play a bigger role than it looked like at some points in the offseason. But he didn't leave on Auburn. He didn't give up on Auburn. So there you go.
Yeah, it's a tough break for Allen.
It is.
Obviously missing time. I mean, the biggest thing to me is you watched him have to play out of position so much last year. And coming in this year, you thought, all right, well, maybe he'll get to kind of play that small forward.
Look at his cat hair on him.
Yeah, that's nice. Hopefully the HD camera is able to pick that up.
My cat, Miles, rubbing on my leg before I left.
I probably have dog hair, to be fair, so don't feel bad. But the fact that Allen had to play out of position so much, and you thought, well, him coming back this year, he's set for himself to really have a big year. I mean, he truly sacrificed a good bit to kind of fill the gap while Sharif wasn't able to play, and then injuries forced him to even play some point guard. And you're looking at it going, okay, well, now that he's back.
He just had such a dumb go of it.
Yeah.
Having to, play fake point guard for part of his year.
Yeah.
Good grief.
With Justin Powell
playing
out.
Behind Isaac as a freshman.
Yeah.
Good grief.
And that's
what
the
a mess.
And that's the thing too. There was the chance that he could have gone pro and decided I want to come back and try to do something special here. So, looking at it optimistically, at least if he's able to come back, if he's able to rehab it, he'll be back in time for the conference play when the games truly do matter.
Right.
And maybe he can kind of work himself in and make something sort of worthwhile out of this junior year.
Right. And I think he can, and I think he will. But just another tough break for one of the good guys on the team.
Absolutely. Mention conference play. I want to look through this real quick, Justin. This was actually announced. We're recording on Thursday. This was announced a little earlier Thursday.
Okay.
Let's
go through it.
Auburn men's basketball SEC schedule. They're going to start with LSU. Just fly through these. At South Carolina versus Florida. At Alabama. At Ole Miss versus Georgia versus Kentucky. At Missouri versus Alabama. I like that they put the versus Oklahoma on here because it's non-conference. But, a couple of years it will be conference.
Yeah, you're right.
So February, I think I mentioned versus Alabama. Then at Georgia, at Arkansas versus Texas A&M versus Vanderbilt. At Florida versus Ole Miss. At Tennessee. At Mississippi State versus South Carolina. Go ahead.
What date is that Kentucky game?
That Kentucky game, the first one, let's see, or is it
at
just,
home? The home one.
The home one is January 22nd.
All right.
So mark your calendars, people. And I think that looks like that's the only time that they play Kentucky this year.
Yeah, it's always a good year for Auburn basketball to get Kentucky home because that's a packed house and a fun environment.
Yes, and so they will play.
They get Florida at home too.
They do. So they'll play Florida twice. They'll play South Carolina twice. I believe, they'll play Georgia twice.
Should play Alabama twice too.
And they'll play
Ole Miss twice.
Let's see. Yeah, they play Ole Miss twice too.
Yeah.
So
it's like Alabama, Georgia, and Ole Miss are their protected rivals.
Yeah.
It's like okay.
Yeah. Cool.
Thanks, Marshall Henderson.
I'll say that I'm really excited just for that very first game, that LSU game, because that LSU team last year was so good, and obviously they've got people they've got to replace.
Sure.
But I think that'll be a good atmosphere, and hopefully by then, everything's going the way it needs to, and we can have a full Auburn arena, because that'll be nice.
I sure hope so, Jordan.
I know. I'm holding out hope is all I'll say.
No, I know.
But
we all are.
But that's sort of the swing of it, and it is interesting to sort of have Oklahoma there in the middle to kind of break that up. With the little SEC Big 12 challenge, the preview of what's to come.
The SEC challenge.
Yeah, exactly. Texas Tech and everybody else like, we're here too. And I'm like, whatever.
I just want Texas Tech to go to the Pac-12. It's so much fun.
I mean, that was the talk,
it fits.
Right? Like a decade
so
ago.
well.
Isn't that what Chip Brown was reporting, that all those teams were going to go? Or 8 or 9 of them were?
Yeah. I just think, Texas Tech, though. Yeah, they fit.
Get
gunslingers.
Get Cliff back.
They pass it around.
Cliff's in Arizona. He can go back to Texas Tech.
Get the Pac-12 network on all those Texas televisions. That's all I'm saying, man. It makes a lot of sense.
I think it makes sense.
Get my people out in Lubbock to head west. Anyway, guns up. Pew pew.
So we are starting. We're in the middle of the early portion of the fall calendar as far as sports.
Ooh, yeah,
and
Jordan.
Things are going pretty well for Auburn athletics.
Man, Auburn's undefeated.
Tell us more, Justin. I'm intrigued.
You've got soccer is 5-0, volleyball's 4-0, and as Brian Harsin loves to hear and loves to say, Auburn football's 1-0.
And 1-0 every day. And what they're gearing for.
So yeah. Soccer is riding the nation's longest winning streak, dating back to last season when they won 5 straight games in the year. Obviously, they would have rather been invited to the NCAA tournament and lost there. So they'd rather not have this long win streak, really. But, unless you win the national championship, which would have been very unlikely. But they have this long win streak, and they're riding it. And then, of course, for volleyball, Brent Crouch, he's finally picking up wins. They played a year that he had just come in, and they played like 8 SEC games in the fall, and then they opted out of spring pretty much. They decided injuries and COVID and whatever. But so, yeah, he's got his first win finally under his belt. They're 4-0, and they haven't dropped a set. I talked to him earlier this week, and obviously he's like, it's going to take until year 3 to really get rocking and rolling, get your people in and have them really understanding what you're doing. Obviously, the schedule difficulty is going to ramp up, but he thinks they're ahead of where he thought they'd be. So you like to hear that, and obviously that's a long-term project. You didn't bring him in from USC just to be impatient with him. And then so 10-0, volleyball and soccer play tonight. Got a chance to go 12-0. And then cross country starts on Friday, and the Auburn is undefeated. It gets a lot murkier when, who knows what's going to happen with that. So, and then if we were to stick to those 3 sports, check your calendar. If you don't know this, check your calendar. Sunday, Auburn soccer is hosting number 1 Florida State. That is going to be a top 10 game in the Auburn soccer complex. It could be the biggest regular season non-conference game in the history of Auburn soccer. So it's also possibly where their winning streak ends. So when you're looking ahead and reading the tea leaves a little bit. So, but hey, for right now and for Thursday, Auburn's, going one game at a time and continuing that win streak. So I think we could see it grow to 13 with football on, even 14 with football, and I think there's another volleyball game on Friday. So.
Well, like you said, the streak will only go so long, but you have to say, for the Auburn fans, that this has got to be a welcome sight, because we've talked about this before, just how tough was the 2020-2021 just athletic season? Yeah. I mean, there was just so many tough breaks.
You're right, for Auburn, yeah.
It was just...
baseball's bad.
Softball struggled.
Men's basketball was banned from the postseason from the very beginning. Women's basketball fired their coach. Football fired their coach.
Yep.
Gymnastics had the worst breakout anybody, and I'll keep shouting this. Yep. Nobody talked about it, but they got NC Stated.
Yeah. They
got COVIDed, contact traced, right before the regional, and the regional is when you qualify for the national meet. Darren Auburn could have gone to the national meet and didn't get to because she couldn't compete at regionals. They got NC Stated out of the postseason, and nobody caused a big huff about it. But I saw more Auburn fans mad about NC State than mad about Auburn gymnastics. But whatever.
Yeah.
Just because of the optics, I guess, and how visible it was. But you're right. What a garbage year last year, and now a welcome sight.
A little momentum is always nice to see.
Yeah, there you go.
So we're getting ready to wrap this up. We're going to have plenty of coverage on Saturday from the Alabama State game. Before we kind of wrap this up, let's talk about one of the stories that I wrote this week that you guys can read. It'll be in the Game Day edition. Will be a look back at 9/11. Saturday will be the 20th anniversary. Wrote a story about the Auburn football team. Really, it was pretty incredible listening to some of the coaches, the players, talk about when they finally got back to action It was in New York.
Yeah.
September 22nd, they went and played Syracuse. So
that wasn't at the tip of my tongue or the front of my mind, you know, and then we looked into what could we write about, and it's like, oh my gosh.
Well,
you know,
I got an idea.
Right after 9/11, Syracuse has its first home game, the first big game back, and wouldn't you know it, who's flying up there but Auburn?
Yeah.
Here's the Auburn football team flying to New York.
Yes.
To play in the Carrier Dome. So who'd you talk to? You talked to Tommy?
Talked to Tommy Tuberville, talked to Daniel Cobb, talked to Jason Campbell, talked to former assistant Joe Witt, talked to David Housel. Who else am I?
Junior Rose Green.
Junior Rose Green.
Wow.
I think that's everybody.
Big list, yeah.
Made sure to talk to everybody I could.
That was crazy, man. And, one of the craziest things, me reading it, was, Jason Campbell talking about, like, they go up there and the security, and, like, they're just, like, they get sniffed by canines before they get on the bus. They get sniffed by canines off the bus. They had canines sweeping the locker room.
Yeah. Just think about how tense that time was in the entire country, and then you try to go in the state where it happened.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And those first big games back were a huge deal.
Yeah,
because they canceled every game that week because there's too much going on, and then there was a fear of just gathering everyone in one place. Yeah, there was a massive fear over it because of course there is.
Yeah,
and you never knew what was going to happen. Yeah, there was just this massive fear of bringing everybody together. So the security was huge. And again, this was Syracuse, right in New York, the most visible, Division I FBS program in New York.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of, it was also really cool to see, I don't know, and of course Auburn lost, but everyone you talked to said that Dwight Freeney was just unstoppable.
Yes.
And I'm like, that's so cool. Like, just the beast mode, hometown hero performance, like, man, I'd like to watch that. If they could replay that somehow. But yeah, how about that?
I know it was on as tough as that story is to talk about. I mean, it was enjoyable to listen to people, kind of go back and talk about what they remember.
And I heard your interview with Jason Campbell, and even he was like, yeah, it's one of those where you chalk it up, and it's like, what did you think was going to happen?
Yeah.
Like, we went up there to let them, they got to have their moment. Like, we competed, but we were not emotionally ready for that. And they were, Syracuse was ready to go win and run through a wall. So
absolutely,
that's just how it happened. That's how it went down.
So with Saturday being the 20th anniversary of 9/11, how old were you when that happened?
Let's talk about what everybody's talking about.
What do you remember?
I was in the 5th grade. I remember it being in Mrs. Barrett's class. And this is what I tell everybody, because everybody shares their stories of, where were you? What do you remember? I was only 10, but I vividly remember Miss Barrett coming up in front of the class and sitting at the front of the class with one of those 3-legged stools, sitting up there and telling us her first words were, "Something has happened to America." And I'll just never forget that. And I don't know why I had the presence of mind to remember, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't remember I don't remember the rest of her speech. But I remember her saying that at the very beginning, is something has happened to America. And it's like everybody listen,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember that. I remember the counselor lady came in and must have spoke to every classroom. So I remember her coming in and answering questions, and we had little weird 10-year-old questions about it. But I remember that. And then I remember going home and my dad being home. And I never beat my dad home. He, from work, he was home from work early.
Yeah.
That never happened. So I remember that and being like, wow. And him being in his red chair, and we just had the TV on all day. Mm. I remember that. So that's what I remember.
Yeah. For me, I was in 2nd grade, so I was in Miss Arundel's class.
You young whippersnapper.
I know. And what I remember, and I kind of wonder if it's like a false memory, if this is just how I remember it and this is not how it happened.
Sometimes that happens.
Yes. I feel like I walked into the classroom and the TV was on.
Right.
And I don't remember, what time we started class or whatever, but I just remember sitting down and the TV was up in the corner and watching, the news coverage. And, that's kind of the most I remember. I don't really remember any of the teachers talking about it. I do remember, which is what some people, we were talking about this before we started recording, seeing kids getting taken out of school. Mm-hmm. I mean, people were getting picked up as that day went on, and you were just sort of like, what's happening?
Right.
I can remember a couple of my cousins getting checked out of school, and I was like, what's going on?
Right.
So that was the biggest thing, and I can even remember just
because you were only in 2nd grade.
Yeah.
I vaguely remember, because you were, what, 8?
I would have been I would have been 7.
Jeez.
Yeah. So, and I vaguely can remember because both my parents have worked for the Postal Service forever.
Yeah.
Just talk about, like there were rumors about anthrax and stuff like that going through the mail. So, I mean, it was tense. It was a tense time starting then. And then, I mean, that continued for, the weeks and months after that.
Dude, it's crazy. And, it's kind of funny for us to share our perspective because then someone listening is, older and they're like, oh, I remember, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we're of that generation where we don't remember what an airport was like.
No. That was the thing to hear, Tuberville and Witt talk about, oh, we should throw a bag on and just take off. And don't do that anymore. And I'm like, I don't have any recollection of that.
Or they say that the ticker started because on the bottom of a news feed. Started because of 9/11.
Might have.
So that was the day that they pretty much got invented. Yeah. And now you turn on the news and it's half ticker.
Half ticker. Well, you talked about the older people, and then think about the younger people who might not have even been alive that are hearing this, and they're like, it wasn't.
All these football players were 1 or 2.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Think about all those little kids. So President Bush was talking to the little kids that day. Yeah. All of them are 26.
Yeah.
Significantly older than these athletes we're covering. Crazy. I don't know. Anyway.
Yes. Well, we're going to wrap it up there.
That was serious talk. But the OA News Overtime podcast.
It's 9/11. I feel like that's,
everybody shares to talk about that. Yeah, everybody shares their stories. So there's ours. That's what we got.
For sure. So we're going to wrap this up. Go read that Auburn-Syracuse 9/11
Please do.
story.
It's a really good story. I think you'll like it.
That.
Jordan worked really hard on it. And like you said, he did the work, man. He talked to Tommy. He talked to Jason Campbell. Talked to Daniel Cobb. Talked to David Housley. Talked to a lot of people. And you're going to want to hear what they had to say.
I appreciate that. So we'll have...
Auburn played at Syracuse.
That's just nuts.
On September 22nd, 2001.
Yes.
That should sell you enough.
Absolutely.
Crazy.
Absolutely. So we're going to wrap this up. Be watching for all kinds of coverage coming out of Saturday's game, and we'll have plenty more after the fact. And be looking, when we come back next week, we'll be talking Penn State.
Hey.
So until then, everybody take care.